In this video, we're going to be taking a look at building this style of bar stool. Now, I really like these stools because they're really easy to put together and they're very inexpensive to make. Now, this particular one was my very first prototype. So we're going to vary the design just slightly, but I just wanted to show you what the stool basically looks like. So this particular one's all made out of fence pickets. And the one we're gonna make today, we're gonna be using fence pickets and a 2x3, okay? So again, we're kind of shaking it up just slightly. But what we're doing is this is a 24-inch stool and we need to build 18-inch stools to go with my little lemonade stand. Okay, so that's what we're gonna be doing. Now, again, we're going to be using fence pickets, and so the thickness of our legs here is 2.5. Okay, and this material is also 2.5, which also happens to be what a 2x3 is. A 2x3 is also 2.5 inches tall. Now you can see here on my original prototype design, I felt we would have the need to double up the legs, and once I built this stool and discovered really how sturdy it was, I decided, well, I'm going to try it with just one thickness of fence picket. Now, these fence pickets are 5/8 of an inch thick. And so when I did it with one fence picket thick, I discovered that that's plenty sturdy. Like I said, it probably doesn't seem like it would be, but because of the design, the way it is plenty sturdy. I'm a big guy. We've had these stools forever. For our outdoor bar, and no issues as far as holding up. Okay, so if you buy, we do have printed plans for these on our Facebook store, and if you buy the plans, you get the 24-inch size. You also get a 30-inch and the 18-inch that we're making today, as well as a bench. So we give you all the dimensions for all the different pieces depending on what size stool you want to make, or if you want to make a bench with the same design, we have that for you as well. Now this can be made entirely of fence pickets, obviously, because this one is, so you don't have to use 2x3s. The 2x3s we're going to be using for all of our cross braces, and the only reason for that is a 2x3 is roughly the same cost as a fence picket. It's just a couple cents more. Like our fence pickets are $2.20, and I think 2x3s are like $2.80 or something like that. So it's not much difference in price, but there's an extra step. If we do it all out of fence pickets, this does have to be a double thickness. You cannot get by with a single thickness here. So you do have to have double thickness. And so all you have to do is rip it, put these two together, and then add your miters after these are glued and stapled together. So it's just an extra step, and so that's why I'm using the 2x3s. So you could definitely do it all out of fence pickets if you wanted to. Now, the reason that I like doing these stools is, like I said, the design. First of all, it's super sturdy, very stable design, but because especially with the 18-inch stool, most of that material can be got for free. So I have obviously a large scrap pile, but you see these are all my 2x3s pieces that I save, because I make a lot of these stools, and the top piece for an 18-inch stool is 6 inches. Actually, for all the different height, this piece right here is 6 inches. That's all we need, 6 inches. And then down here, this one on the 24-inch, I believe it's 10 5/8. But on the 18-inch one, it's 9 5/8. This might be 10 3/4. I don't know. You'd have to refer to the plans. But at any rate, for the 18-inch one we're making today, I do know that this cross piece is 9 5/8. So a lot of the material that you can get for free, just scraps, from the different construction sites, what have you. So anyhow, I save all of that for just for these stools, because I know I use a lot of small pieces. Now our legs are 2.5 inches wide. So we're gonna rip one fence picket. We're gonna rip it twice to make 2 pieces that are 2.5 inches long. Now the seat is 12 inches, right? And then we have this second part of our seat. These are only 10 inches. So this is 12. This is 11 inches, and then 10 inches. So you can see here. Let's see here. How did we do this one? Yeah. So you see we have this piece going this way, and then these pieces go in the opposite direction. Just holding those 2 pieces together. Okay. So anyhow, that's the basis of what we're going to be building. So the first thing we need to do is take a fence picket. We're going to cut 2 pieces that are 12 inches long, and then 2 pieces that are 10 inches long, and that will give us our seat. Then with the rest of our fence picket, we're going to rip it down to 2.5 inches wide to get these. Okay, and then we'll pick up, once we get that far done, we'll pick up and kind of move on to our next step. Now, in a perfect world, we would find fence pickets with no knots or very small knots. And here we have a pretty good little knot, but this piece, there's really no knots in it. And this does have a knot here, and a knot there, but there's a big section here that doesn't have a knot. And then above the knot, there's another big section that is clear wood, no knots. So that's kind of what I look for when I'm picking out fence pickets. You know, it's hard to avoid any knots, but small ones like this is okay. And we'll either cut around it, or we might go ahead and utilize this in our project. In this case, I don't think we will. I don't think we'll need to. There's enough clean material to get the pieces out of this that we need. So our next step is to cut all of these at 17 1/4. We're going to need 4 pieces that are 17 1/4 that will become our legs. So I'll go ahead and set up my stop block on my miter saw, and then we'll cut 4 pieces that are 17 1/4. So I'm making 2 stools, so I need eight legs. But if you're only making 1, then obviously you only need 4 pieces. So these are cut to 17 1/4, and you can see on this one, I went ahead and mitered the very ends at 10 degrees. So when you're going to take this back into the miter saw to cut your angles, you want to line up your blade right to that tip, right? Cut your 10 degrees, and then you're going to flip it over both directions. So now you'll have an angle going this way. And then we want to do the same thing on this one, okay? So the main thing here is to make sure that these angles are parallel. So they're going in the same direction when you're cutting. So if you're new to angles, you'll have to remember how, which way to properly flip it, but just make sure that those angles are going the same direction, 10 degrees on all of them. Now, you can see on the one, all of these are clear wood except this one. This one's got a knot in it. So I might just go ahead. Could we use it? Yes, I think we could. If I did have to use a piece with a knot in it, I would probably put the knot at the top. But in my case, I've got plenty of scrap here, plenty of wood. I'm just going to go ahead and cut one more so we don't have to use that one with the knot, and we'll have all clear wood. Okay? So let me go ahead and add the angles. I'll recut this piece so we don't have to use that knot, and then we'll pick up with our next pieces that we have to cut. All right, so now I'm going to cut my blocks that I'm going to use here, and I'm going to use here. So up top is 6, down here is 9 5/8 for the 18-inch stool, 9 5/8. So because I'm building 2 stools, I need 8 6-inch pieces and 8 9 5/8 pieces. So I think I don't have enough scrap for everything, but I'm going to use up the little pieces that I do have before I tear into another board. So first step is cut 8 pieces that are 6 inches and 8 pieces that are 9 5/8. Now obviously if you're not making 2 stools, you don't need 8 pieces. You only need 4 of each size per stool. So let me get those cut, and then we'll talk about the compound miter that we have to add to these. Okay, so now we have all of our pieces cut for our blocks, top and bottom. I've cut 8 pieces that are 6 inches and 8 pieces that are 9 5/8. Now what we have to do is go over to the miter saw and show you how we have to cut these to add the compound miter. To each one of these blocks is cut the exact same way. So I'm going to show you how to do it on one, and then I'll go through and do it on all of them. So what I've done here is I've set my miter at that 10 degrees, because remember we cut our legs at 10 degrees, and then I set my bevel to 45 degrees. You can see that there. So our first cut that we're going to make, I'm going to put my block of wood in here. Now this is what I would encourage you to do with your saw. Okay, now if you notice, this corner of this block is right at the edge of this throat plate here, right there at the corner. See it there? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut it right there, just where it sits, and show you what the result is. So let me go do that, and I'll come back and I'll show you the result. Now I haven't moved it at all, and you can see that that blade came down right there at that position, right where I had it. Now we're going to cut the other side. So we have to make a change to our saw to do that. But so what I would normally do is I would cut all of these at this angle on all of them. And then all we have to do to cut the opposite side, our 45-degree bevel remains, and we just turn it to 10 degrees, okay? We just turn it to 10 degrees, but we have to turn our block around. So this bevel is going this way. Now we're going to go this way. Now, on my saw, what I found out was, if I take the corner, this plate right here is right where the blade comes. So when I'm placing my block, I'm going to move it so that the back corner is in line with this plate. I don't know if you can see that very clearly in the video necessarily, but that's how I do it. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut that. Now because we're dealing with such a small piece of wood, do mind your fingers on the back side of the blade, please. So do mind your fingers, but even at the 6 inches, it's pretty easy to hold it in place and be clear of your blade. But do be careful. But you could see where the blade cut, right there at that corner, right where we lined it up. So that's exactly what we want. So there is our little block. This is our little 6-inch one, okay? So remember, we're going to start off with our miter to the right, or at 10 degrees, cut all of your blocks. Then all we have to do is turn it around, and then come with your left miter, 10 degrees, leaving the 45-degree bevel on the back end. Okay, so see now we got that set to 10, and now we can cut this one. All right, so the point is on your saw, make a test cut, find out where your alignment spot is, and just make a mental note so when we're putting our blocks in, we can just go boom, 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 and knock them out really quick, okay? All right, so let me go ahead and finish cutting all of our blocks, and then we can start taking a look at assembly. Okay, so there are all of our blocks cut, ready to go. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to take 60 grit sandpaper and my orbital sander, give everything a light dusting, round over just very quickly, round over all the edges. And some of these blocks have this printing on them. So I'm going to go ahead and remove all of that, and then we can start the assembly process, the fun part. And you'll find that the assembly goes really quick too. So let's go ahead and get everything sanded up, and then we'll get our glue, and we'll get our 1-inch staples and our 1.25 inch staples, and we'll look at putting this together. We're also going to need 2.5 inch screws and 3.5 inch screws, and we're going to be using the screws with a T25 bit. So we're going to need an impact with a T25 bit as well. So those are the supplies that we got to gather up, but let's get it all sanded up, and then we'll start with assembly. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is put our seat panels together. So we have our 12-inch pieces running horizontally and our 10-inch pieces running vertically. Put some glue on. We're just going to flip these over in place and just kind of leave an equal amount all the way around. Just center those two on there. And we'll go ahead and staple those down. We'll do that on both seat platforms there. All right, now the fun part. We're going to assemble the stool. So what we want to do, first of all, is switch out to our 1.25 inch staples, which I've done. And we're going to use a little bit of wood glue, but I want to show you how this block mounts to our leg. So, this I can't really staple this and video and show you. So I'm going to show you, and then I'm going to use both hands to do my stapling. But you can see on the bottom edge here that we've lined that up to that edge, and then on the front, or the top I should say, that's lined up. So wood glue, line those two up, and then we're just going to have a couple of staples that'll temporarily hold our block to our leg. Okay, so let me go ahead and add some glue, add some staples, and then we'll kind of move on to the next step here. Okay, so I've added my staples. You can see there's my staples, and you can see I actually shot one of those staples on the backside through. Now I don't worry too much about it, but once you've kind of gotten used to doing this, you'll minimize that where you poke through on the backside. I have a flapper grinder. Well, I'll just hit that, take it right off of there. 2 seconds, no problem. When you're assembling, if you want to and you have the ability to, hitting a couple staples on the backside is not a terribly bad idea. You'll see as the process goes through that may not be a bad idea to poke a couple of staples on the backside here too. You don't have to, but I'm going to because I have access to it on this one. Now, like I said, once we get some more legs on here, that is going to be a little bit trickier on the backside, but as long as we have access to it, I'll go ahead and do it for right now. So let me go ahead and I'll nip these staples off, put a couple in here, and then we'll move on to our next leg. A little hard to do all this with one hand, so bear with me, but you can see how I've got my next leg there. So there's our first one. It's sitting firmly on the table. I'm just holding these two pieces together. Now I am going to add some glue, and then we're just going to do like we did before. We're going to pop a couple staples in, and then because we have access to the backside, we'll pop a couple staples in on the backside. But this is how I would go about, adding that secondary leg. And then what we can do is we can just do this whole process one more time for the other side, okay? So let's go ahead and add this leg. You can see it's lined up right there on that edge. It's lined up right there on this edge. So we'll add some glue, a couple staples on the front, a couple staples on the back. All right, so now we have our leg assembly our first leg assembly kind of put together. And so you can see we have a couple staples on the outside, and then like I said, I hit a couple staples on the inside. I did take my little grinder wheel here, my little flap disc, and leveled off them staples on the back side here. So all that's good. Now, what we can do is go ahead and add our lower braces here. Now, I apparently made some kind of error. It might have been on my stop block. Is I didn't really cut these the right length, unfortunately. So, not a big deal. So what we're going to do is we're going to measure it from the bottom, because I screwed up on my length, 4 1/4. Okay, and so I just put a little mark there, and I'll line my piece up. Again, we'll glue it, we'll staple it on the front and back, but I just wanted to point that out. The plans really call for that to be 2 inches, okay? But like I said, I messed up a little bit, so that'll be fine. It'll work out, but just make sure that that's 4 1/4. I'll have to make sure it's 4 1/4, but if you cut these the right length, they should be at 2 inches, not the 4 1/4. But at any rate, not a big deal. We'll make that small adjustment. So let me go ahead and add this, and then I'm going to recreate this entire assembly one more time, okay? For quote, so we've created this side, now we're going to create this side, okay? So let me go ahead and add this piece, and then we're going to do the second piece, the second set of legs. Then when I come back, we'll look at putting them together. Okay, so now we have both of our individual assemblies together. And now we're just going to go ahead and basically kind of repeat the same process. So we're just going to go ahead and put this on both sides here. It's kind of the next block, if you will. So we'll put that on, staple it the same way, and then we'll attach the two pieces together. So let me go ahead and get these blocks on here, and then we'll show you how to put the two halves together then. Okay, so we've got our two blocks on. Like I said, those are pretty simple. All I did was kind of lay it down, so I moved it to the edge of my table, held my glue up there and popped a couple staples in, and turned it around. Same thing, right to the edge of the table so I can get my staple gun in there, glue, popped a couple staples in. So that's it. So now, to try and show you kind of how we're going to do the next step. The next step is same basic thing we've done all along. Just line it up. We're going to put some glue in there, get it lined up, a couple of staples. Now the other side, you're just going to manhandle. Whatever way you got to bend it, twist it to get it lined up and glued, that's what you do. That will almost never come out exact. So it will take some manipulation, okay? And then once we've done that, then we can go ahead and add in our two lower braces. Basically the same process. So let me go ahead and get this tacked together, and then we'll look at the other side. Now it's not going to take a whole lot of manipulation, but you can see we do have to squeeze that together. I've already applied some wood glue in there. Squeeze that together, pop in a couple of staples, okay? So just make sure it's lined up on the bottom, lined up right here on this edge right here. Pop a couple staples in, and then we can add our bottom braces and then add our finishing screws. All right, so all of our pieces are in place, and you can see it's not perfect, right? There's a little bit of a gap there, a little bit of a gap there. This is where the two kind of came together, and you can see there's a pretty good gap there. And unless your miters are absolutely perfect, you can see that positioning is not quite right. It's not gonna be perfect, but we're also just building a stool, guys. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It's a rustic stool. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drill some pilot holes, right? And go through this way at every corner with a 2.5-inch screw, and that will suck it all together and make it super sturdy. Okay, so let me go ahead and do that. Now you see how our stool wobbles? So it's wobbling this way. Your stool is going to wobble one way or the other. So in my case, it's going back and forth this direction. So what we want to do is we want to sand these two legs at the bottom until that goes away. Okay, and I'll show you that here. Now you do want to make sure you're dealing with a flat surface, and I can tell you this, while it may look flat, it's not perfectly flat. So what I usually like to use is either the bed on the table saw, or I have a thick piece of glass that I'll level off stools with, and tables and whatnot. But you can see it's not level, but it's easy to get level. Just sand. So if it wobbles this way, sand the opposite legs until it quits wobbling. And the other thing I will point out too about that is, surprisingly, you don't have to sand a lot. A little goes a long way. You'll see that when you get into it. But you know, you might spend, I don't know, 15 seconds on both legs and then test it. Another 15 seconds and boom, it's perfect. So don't think you gotta grind and grind and grind and grind, because you don't. It'll level off pretty fast for you. Okay, so let me go ahead and make some pilot holes at all these corners. And so I'll have a screw going this way, and I'll have a screw going this way. Okay, so when I'm putting in my screw, I kind of go up higher, and then on the back side I go lower. Okay, so anyhow, that's what I'll do and finish this one off. You can see I have all my support screws in all the way around. So now it's just a matter of attaching the base to our top, which we're going to do with 3.5-inch screws. So we have two pieces of 5/8, that's 1 1/4 plus our 2.5. So we really have 3 3/4, and we're going to be using 3.5-inch screws, and so they won't poke through the top, but it'll be very close. So let's go ahead, and we're just going to add one. I think we're just going to add one slightly off center all the way around will be enough. So there we have it, one completed stool, and you can see the wobble is taken off. I sanded those legs down a little bit so we have no more wobble, and that is our finished product. So now I just have to do it all over again, and once I get the other one done, I'll show it to you guys with our lemonade stand over there.